Archons. Say that word out loud. Feel how strange it sits in your mouth. Most people have never heard it, but it might explain more about your exhaustion, your anxiety, and your sleepless nights than anything a doctor ever told you. You know that tired for no reason feeling. The mind that spins at 3 a.m. over something that doesn't matter. You've blamed stress, work, bad sleep. But what if something older is feeding on exactly that spiral? This isn't a beginner talk on energy and chakras. You already know that. Tonight we're going deeper, into Gnostic teaching, into the Archons, and into a practice you can use before bed tonight. This isn't folklore. The Archons come from real texts, the Nag Hammadi library, Gnostic manuscripts buried in the Egyptian desert around 400 AD, hidden by mystics who feared destruction. They describe a false creator god and lesser beings guarding the gates of your mind, feeding on fear and confusion. I believe, this is my own conviction, not universal truth, these texts weren't myths. I think they were early attempts to describe something real. A pattern people have felt for thousands of years but struggled to name. And I think that pattern is still running today, quietly, underneath your everyday exhaustion. By the end of this video, you'll understand what the Archons are said to be, why they feed on you, and the exact practice for closing that loop tonight. Not next week. Tonight. Stay with me. It's already feeding while you watch this. Tonight is the only time you can stop it before it happens again. Archons are not demons. Not a Hollywood monster. Not conspiracy theory. This comes from Gnosticism, a real spiritual tradition that existed alongside early Christianity and was persecuted for it. In Gnostic teaching, Archons are rulers created by a flawed god called the Demiurge, an imposter who believes he's the true source of everything, when he's really just one layer of something far larger. The Archons work for him, keeping human souls trapped in a loop of distraction, fear, and forgetting where you actually come from. Here's my personal take. You don't need to believe in a literal cosmic hierarchy, floating somewhere out in space to find value here. Think of the Archons as a description of a pattern. Fear loops, shame spirals, a hunger that never quite satisfies no matter how much you feed it. Whether that pattern is metaphysical or psychological, I believe humans have sensed it for thousands of years, long before psychology gave us language for it. That's not just my opinion floating in isolation either. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who founded analytical psychology and spent decades studying the human unconscious, took Gnostic writing seriously. Seriously enough to write his own Gnostic-influenced text, 7 Sermons to the Dead. Jung believed the ancient Gnostics were describing real psychological forces, using the only language available to them, mythological language. Gods, demons, rulers of a lower world, standing in for structures of the mind nobody yet had words for. That's remarkable to me. A founding figure of modern psychology looked at 2,000-year-old religious texts and essentially said, there's something real being described here. So why did this concept survive being buried for 1,600 years? Sealed in a jar since around 400 AD, the texts resurfaced only in 1945. And the moment they did, people were captivated, not curiosity, recognition. My belief is that ideas describing something true don't need constant reinforcement. They wait and resurface exactly when people need them most. You felt it. I know you have. That's probably part of why you're still watching. Let me take you somewhere for a moment. It's just past 2 in the morning. The room is dark except for a phone charging on the nightstand, that small blue glow. Your body is exhausted, but your mind will not stop. It's replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, a comment that shouldn't matter this much, a mistake from years back that has no business showing up right now. Around and around it goes, the same loop over and over. The room feels heavy. Not peaceful, heavy. A silence with actual weight to it. You've felt that before. Then one clear thought cuts through the noise. This isn't random. Not the thought itself. Thoughts always come and go randomly. What isn't random is the pattern. The timing. The fact that the spiral always seems to hit hardest exactly when you're most tired, most alone, most vulnerable. Right when your defenses are lowest. Like something is waiting for precisely that moment to arrive. That was the night it clicked for me. No lightning bolt, no grand vision. Just a quiet, uncomfortable realization sitting there in the dark that this spiral wasn't really about the conversation, or the mistake, or whatever surface trigger had shown up that night. It was about something underneath, a pattern that had been running for years, one I'd never once stopped to look at directly. That's what recognition feels like. Small, uncomfortable. Most people never get here, Not because they're not spiritual enough, but because the loop is built to keep you moving, never letting you look at the machine underneath. You looked, or you're about to. That's exactly why you're still watching this. Here's the part that changes how you see your entire day. Esoteric tradition sometimes calls this lush, energy generated by intense emotional states, especially negative ones. Fear, grief, guilt, shame, rage. The idea is simple, even if it sounds strange the first time you hear it. Every time you spiral into fear or shame, you generate a kind of charge. And the Archons, or whatever you want to call that control pattern, feed on exactly that charge. Not blood or flesh. Emotional static, generated by your own mind, again and again. I'll be honest, when I first heard this idea, I rolled my eyes. It sounded too tidy. But then I started watching my own patterns, and something uncomfortable showed up. My worst moments were almost always triggered by something that seemed engineered to trigger exactly that reaction. Think about your phone for a second. The apps you open without even deciding to. Notice how the content that keeps you scrolling longest is rarely calm or peaceful. It's outrage, fear, comparison, the stuff that tightens your chest slightly before you've even consciously registered you're upset. I genuinely believe, and I'll fully own this as my opinion, that modern digital design mirrors archonic feeding patterns almost too perfectly to be coincidence. I'm not saying tech companies are literally channeling ancient cosmic rulers. I'm saying the same pattern old mystics described 2,000 years ago has simply found a far more efficient delivery system in the modern world. It just needs your engagement, hooked into fear, on repeat, every single day. That 2 a.m. spiral you know so well. That's lush production. Trigger. Spiral. Drain. Repeat. Once you actually see it clearly, you cannot unsee it again. And that recognition is exactly the doorway you're going to walk through tonight. Something uncomfortable, especially if you've already tried protection work. Most rituals fail, not because they're fake, but because of how they're approached from the start. Think about the standard version most people are taught. Visualize a shield. Beg negative energy to leave. Picture white light surrounding your body while your heart pounds and your breath goes shallow. Convince something bad is actually near you right now. Do you see the problem here? The entire ritual is soaked in fear from beginning to end. And if fear itself is the fuel, if that tight-chested, spiraling feeling is exactly what feeds the pattern we just talked about, then a fear-based ritual isn't closing the loop at all. It's feeding it. You're standing there, terrified, generating precisely the charge that keeps the whole system running smoothly. That's not your fault. Most popular spiritual protection content is built on urgency and fear, because that performs better, creating the same lush-generating cycle we've discussed, just dressed up in spiritual language. The trap inside the trap. Real protection, from what I've come to believe through actual practice, isn't a battle at all. It's withdrawal. Quiet, deliberate withdrawal of your attention and charge from the loop. Done so calmly the loop has nothing left to grab onto or feed from. That's the practice now. Not a spell. Not a desperate plea to some outside force. A deliberate, calm act of reclaiming yourself, tonight, before you sleep. This is what you came for. Do this tonight, and pay attention to the why behind each step. That's what turns this into something real, not another empty ritual. Step 1. Set your intention without fear. Before bed tonight, sit quietly for 1 minute. Just 1 minute, that's genuinely all. Not lying down yet, sitting upright, somewhere quiet. Instead of a prayer that begs for protection, state something calm and matter-of-fact, almost plain. I see the pattern. I am not feeding it tonight. Notice the difference in tone there. No pleading. No fear underneath the words. This is what the old Gnostics called gnosis, direct knowing, not belief, not begging. Fear only exists where there's uncertainty. Once you see the mechanism clearly, fear naturally starts draining out of the whole picture. Step 2, the release. This is the true core of the practice, so don't rush through it. Close your eyes. Breathe in slowly for a count of 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6, longer than the inhale, because a longer exhale signals real safety to your nervous system. As you exhale, picture something specific. A thin, glowing thread connecting your chest to whatever thought has been looping in your mind lately. See it clearly for a moment. Now, on the exhale, picture the thread simply going slack, not violently cut, just gently released, like letting go of a rope you didn't even realize you were still gripping. Do this for 5 full breath cycles. Not 50. 5. Here's why it actually works. The loop needs your engagement and your charge to survive. It cannot force you to give it. It can only invite you, over and over, through triggers, hoping you'll take the bait like you always have before. When you consciously withdraw calmly, without resistance or fear, you're doing something the loop simply has no counter for. You're just no longer participating in it. Step 3, the sealing. After your 5 breaths, place one hand flat over your chest. Say, either out loud or silently, "This is mine. What I don't feed does not grow." Simple words, but spoken with real conviction, they carry weight. This isn't superstition, it's focused attention, and attention is the single most valuable resource you actually have. Why night specifically matters. Across Gnostic and Hermetic tradition, night is the threshold between waking consciousness and the unconscious, the same territory Jung studied. Whatever charge you carry into sleep gets reinforced while you rest. That's why the 2 a.m. spiral feels stronger than the same worry at noon. That's why doing this practice right before sleep matters so much. You're closing the door right at the threshold, before your unconscious mind fully takes over for the night. 5 minutes total. No candles, no crystals, no money spent anywhere. Just 5 quiet minutes in your full, undivided presence. I won't tell you one night of this makes you enlightened. That wouldn't be honest. What I will tell you is what tends to actually shift, based on what I've experienced. The first change usually isn't dramatic. It's a loosening. The spiral might still show up the next night, or the night after. Old patterns don't vanish overnight. But you'll likely notice it doesn't grip quite as hard as before. A small gap appears now between the trigger and the spiral, where there used to be none at all. That gap is everything. That gap is where your actual power lives. Over weeks, not one single night, that gap tends to widen further. You start catching yourself mid-spiral, instead of only realizing you were caught after the fact. You start recognizing the specific triggers in your daily life, certain content, certain conversations, certain situations that seem almost engineered to pull you straight into fear or shame. And once you see them clearly, they genuinely lose a huge amount of their power over you. Personally, the biggest shift wasn't some dramatic awakening. It was smaller, almost embarrassing to admit. I started sleeping better. My 2 a.m. spirals became less frequent, then shorter, then rare. That's honestly what real change looks like. Not fireworks. Quiet relief building slowly over time. One honest note, this practice isn't a replacement for real mental health support if you're dealing with serious anxiety, trauma, or depression. If what you're facing feels bigger than a nightly spiral, please talk to someone qualified. This is a tool for the pattern we've described, not a cure-all. Let's go back to where we started. Archons. Strange in your mouth at the beginning of this video, wasn't it? I wonder if it feels a little different now. Here's the real secret, the one thing I want you to actually walk away with tonight. It was never really about defeating some external force floating out there in the architecture of the universe. The real secret is what you consistently give yourself to. Whatever you feed, without ever questioning it, without ever noticing it, that's what grows. That's what quietly runs your life in the background while you blame stress, bad luck, or a difficult week. The Archons, the Demiurge, Lush, call it whatever framework makes sense to you, ancient or modern, mystical or psychological. What actually matters is this: you have the ability, right now, tonight, to consciously choose what you engage with and what you finally let go of. That's sovereignty. Real sovereignty. Not control over the outside world. Control over your own inner world, your own energy, your own peace. It's the one thing that was always yours, even during the years you forgot you had it. Nobody can hand that to you, and nobody can take it away either, unless you keep sleepwalking through the same spiral night after night without ever stopping to ask why. You clicked on this video because some part of you already sensed something wasn't quite right, even before you had language for it. Some part of you has been waiting for this exact information for a long time, whether you realized it or not. Tonight, you have both, the language and the practice. What you do with it from here is entirely yours to decide. If this resonated with you, stay around for what's coming next in this work. There's a lot more to explore here, deeper Gnostic teachings, deeper practices, deeper layers of this same pattern we've only started uncovering tonight. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper with me. For now, tonight, before you sleep, do the practice. 5 minutes. That's the whole ask. See the pattern. Breathe. Release the thread. Seal it. And notice, just notice, what shifts by morning.